You're listening to Crushing Club Marketing, a podcast for progressive club leaders ready to increase their club's revenue. Time for change begins right now. Websites are constantly evolving. No longer is your website an online brochure. It should be a critical part of your membership and marketing team. People who come to your website want to know more about your amenities, your staff, and mostly they want to know about your members to see if they'll fit in. They're looking for answers and they want them now. Are you able to help them, even if it's after hours? In this episode, Lisa Schmidtke and I get into a conversation about what you can do to make your website the top performing member of your team. Do you remember the early days of websites? Some businesses at that time in the beginning didn't think they needed one. They were super basic, and let's face it, they're really more a digital brochure than anything else. A lot of copy, a few pictures, and of course, there's no video. And in the early years, the idea of having a website that could drive new members, increase revenue, and answer questions for members and prospective members was absolutely unheard of. They just did not exist. All right, so if you pause just now when I mentioned driving new members and increasing revenue, this podcast might be for you because most club websites that we see even today aren't doing that kind of stuff. In fact, they have more or less it's a landing page with a member login, and there's very little additional information. Luckily, through the pandemic, most clubs weren't really concerned about attracting new members. A lot of clubs were flush. They had wait lists. Times were good. Maybe your club is one of those. Well, if your wait list has dried up and you're anticipating a need for new members, you better focus on your website because your prospective members sure the heck are. All right, today, Lisa Schmidtke joins me to talk about club websites and what you can do to turn them into the most valuable part of your membership team. Hey there, Lisa. How you doing today?
I'm great. How are you, Ed?
I'm doing just fine, thanks. Thanks for joining in on the fun here with Crushing Club Marketing.
Happy to be here.
All right, so in full disclosure, Lisa and I do work together. So the conversations that we're having have been had before to some degree, but to frame it up for you, to just to be able to hear some different thoughts around web design and development, we thought that it might be helpful for Lisa to share her insights because Lisa, as we mentioned, her career has been in building and designing websites, and so much more an expert in this area than I am for sure. So looking forward to the conversations today, Lisa.
Yeah, I am as well.
All right, so let's just talk a little bit about, we'll just dive right into this because club websites are, it depends. First of all, it depends on the type of club you're at. We recognize the fact that there are some clubs, and it's very few, but there are, the elite clubs in this country that really don't need to worry about this. I mean, in my opinion, I think you would agree that all clubs really should think about how they're presenting themselves online these days because it's an opportunity to show your club off and your space and your membership to some degree. But recognizing this might not be a priority for some clubs, but for the vast majority of other clubs, how they look and come across online is pretty important.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. And just like you said, even if they're not using it as a marketing tool or a lead generation tool, inevitably somebody, one of their members, maybe a guest of a member, is going to go access the website, and it's got to reflect the vision and the professionalism of the course.
Yeah. And so when we talk about websites and the conversations that we have with club leaders, so often they go to the functionality of the back end. And there are some very strong developers of the back end experience for members. And they're getting better and better. And that member experience in the back end is getting better and better. What we're going to talk about today is really that front end. What we always refer to internally is the public facing, that part of your website where when I'm searching your club and I find you, that side of the website, that is where we're going to spend most of our time today. And so let's just start with there. Like, why does that matter? Why are we spending time today talking about the importance of that side of the website?
Yeah. I say it's because, as far as the private, the member side, as we call it, the software that most people are using do a fine job of allowing people to make a tea time and sign up for dinner reservations and, things like that. But, most of that functionality people are getting from their app anyway. But really with the front facing side, since the members are really just looking to come to the website, do what they need to do, log in and move on if they go to the website at all, the majority of the website should be focused on the front facing. And by that I mean the copy, the graphics, the design should be designed so that prospects can actually see themselves at the club and envision what it would be like to be a member there.
Yeah, and as I was saying, in the intro to our conversation today, in talking to so many club leaders through the years, in fact, there's one of my CMAA workshops. We use one of the clubs with the organizer of the host of the event, I should say. We use his club as an example, in a lot of beautiful spaces, a lot of beautiful amenities, but no people at
Mhm.
all, and which is really, I think, that's one of the biggest mistakes that we probably see out there, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because what happens then is the photos often look like stock photography. People can't even tell if it's really a photo of the club or not. And then back to what I said, it's really hard for a person to envision and see what it would be like using that pool, playing that course if there are no people on the course and in the pool.
Right.
So,
Everyone wants to be able to look at that and go, "Can I see myself there? Can I see my family there?" Right? And if it's stock imagery, let's face it, stock images look like stock images. I mean, they look kind of hokey, right? I mean, there's some that are better than others, but for the most part, kind of hokey.
yeah, for sure.
All right, from the back end, from a development perspective, let's just talk about that. As far as what private, and you've seen the back end of some club websites today. They're missing certain elements that would enhance organic search. Can you just talk about what is organic search? Why does it matter, and what's missing?
Yep, yep. So organic search, that is, not to be too elementary here, but that is, somebody puts a keyword into the search engine. There are paid ad results below that, and on pages beyond the first page, there are organic. So the goal really should be to try to rank as high as you can organically, so that you don't have to. Well, number one, so that you start showing up at all, and number two, that you don't have to then do paid ad strategies. There are a number of coding practices that a platform should adhere to. That back end code, that metadata, all important. But I always say that the web building tools should just automatically be optimized for that. You shouldn't have to work around or spend a lot of time trying to get your code to be up to par for search engines. So that should be a given. And we find that a lot of club software that are used for these private club side of their websites, even those are not really built to be optimized for that. It's a lot of messy code, lots going on there, hard to update. So just getting a website on a platform that's just their code and backend is optimized, step one. Really, it's everything you do beyond that. The key to then being ranking high in search engines is to providing valuable educational content on a consistent basis. And that doesn't mean adding a bunch of web pages or spamming it with keywords. A very effective tool for that, and in our world, is blogging. And with blogging, that is how clubs can really help to see new members in a more detailed way. So not just photos, not just a web page, but information, detailed information, highlighting members and staff is a really effective tool for that as well.
All right, I want to dive a little bit deeper into blogging in a minute because in the workshops that I've done, that always comes up. Is like because storytelling always ends up with like, well, how should we do it? Where should it go? And blogging is one of those vehicles. And we could probably spend a whole other podcast talking about that as well as organic versus paid search and all this stuff. But anyway,
Yeah.
I don't want to complicate it. I do want to just, if you're listening to Lisa and you're going, well, code, what is that? And metadata and stuff like that. Um, I do want to try to provide some explanation of that that's not going to go too in depth. And let me just take a quick crack at least and tell me where I'm screwed up. Um, Websites are usually built with there's code, right? And we think about that, and sometimes there's words that go into the back end of the website that tells, like Google. When we talk about search engines, Google is a search engine, Yahoo is a search engine, right? So there's certain words that go into a website or that should go into the back end of a website that automatically tell search engines certain things about your website, right? Like content or what you do or things like that. So when we talk about coding, we talk about organic search. We want your website to perform in a way, or all websites to perform in a way so that when people are looking for certain things, whether it's golf courses, tennis facilities, things like that, that your site organically comes up. How'd I do?
Yeah. That's perfect. Great job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. So just with that as a backdrop, so let's dive into the blogging and organic search thing um, for a minute here, so we can just hopefully provide some clarity around that, because people will say sometimes, like, one of the questions I always get, Lisa, is like, well, when people come to our website, how will they find our blog?
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the common thing. So what do you
Yeah.
say to that?
Yeah. I mean, certainly it should be, promoted all over the website. Sometimes we use pop-ups to say subscribe to our blog. It should be featured on the homepage. But, a lot of times, depending on the topic, search engines like Google will even show the blog before they show your homepage or another page on your website. So if it provides enough information that user is looking for, it's likely to show up.
Yeah, and so that's it's such a great differentiation to make, because what people forget sometimes is that a lot of website visitors find a website not through the homepage, or if you
Mhm.
think about it as your house, not through the front door, but through a side door, which is a blog. So there's a term that I love in some of the analytics we see, which is entrances, right? Like visits and entrances. And sometimes an entrance is like, how did they enter into that website? And a lot of times, like you're saying, their most entrances are coming through a blog post that someone has written.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if that blog is then also promoted through social media. So if there is a Facebook post or an Instagram post or something like that says, "Hey, here's some information about our club. We just wrote this blog. Go read it." Sometimes the social media post will show up on Google before the blog itself, before a web page. So it's also important to, not just write the blog, not just post the blog, but really promote it.
Right. So hopefully if you're listening, this is starting to make some sense to you. And if you just think about it from how you might search for information and what you find, like a lot of times people will say, they say it less now, but they say it all the time. It's like, I don't read blogs. You're like, actually you probably do, but you just don't realize you're reading a blog, right? I
Sure.
mean, it's like, oh, I was just searching for this and I found this great article, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
probably and it's really a blog. And a blog is really just, yeah, I mean, again, correct me if I'm wrong. It's really just another page on your website. Is that right?
Yes. Yep. That's a way. It's just indexed and promoted in just a different way.
Okay. So I do want to just go one step deeper on this now that we have this idea of blogging, because what a lot of people say is like, well, what are we going to write that people will find? Or this is maybe that next level question, right? And so what I want you to think about if you're listening is today's member, or that 42-year-old member that you hear a lot of people talking about. And by the way, there is this, the greatest transfer of wealth in history will happen in the next 10 years, or I think by 2045, they're saying will be the greatest transition of wealth in history. So there will be young people with discretionary income to spend, and they are going to go online to look for a lot of information that may or may not have anything to do with your club. So what I think of is sometimes, Lisa, I'll go, well, you know what? They're going to be looking for things like activities for their kids. At
Mhm.
what age should I get my child involved in sports? When should they start taking swimming lessons? How to become a competitive swimmer, right? What age should I start my child playing golf? And imagine if those people who are searching for those for answers to those questions, if they find blogs that your club has written,
Yeah.
then all of a sudden you're coming up on their radar and they might be thinking of a totally different experience for their family, but they come across your website.
Yeah. And by the way, they don't want to pick up the phone and call you.
Right.
And they don't want to, wait for information. They want this information, especially the younger generation, right away at their fingertips. If they have to pick up the phone, that's a barrier to entry. They won't do it.
Right. And it's funny. I'm glad you said that because what's if you think about that a little bit more, we'll talk about that target member prospect. It's like, well, they don't do this and they won't do that. But what you really need to do is think about yourself, right? It's like I don't I don't shop or look for things, especially like things like a private club membership between 8 and 5.
Yeah.
It's at night and it's on the weekends and it's when I have the time to do it. And to your point, it's like I want the information when I want it, not when you're available for it. And you can argue the fact that it's like, well, that's not the type of club we are. And that's fine. And some people will be okay with that, but some people may not. And they'll
Yeah.
move on to that next club in your market.
Yeah, that's right. Or it'll just take them longer to become a member or become your prospect. So, it's getting them in the door as soon as you can and providing the information as quick as they can.
Right. Okay. So just really quickly recapping, because we're going to move on to that next thing that we're talking about is that people don't want to wait until you're in the office on Monday or Tuesday because you're closed on Monday, whatever. So the idea that the front end of your website or the public facing part is really important, and that with that part of your website you can leverage that so that more people find you through organic search,
Yeah.
or when they go to your website they can find more information that is sometimes in the form of a blog.
Mhm.
And blogs are helpful for helping you get found for certain things. They answer questions and it's helpful information. And it also tells search engines that you are known for or an expert in some of these areas or these topic areas. So I just
That's
want to
right.
make sure everyone's staying with us here,
Mhm.
because ultimately, if we can provide people more information so they can determine whether or not the club is right for them, because you've given them so much information, that should make the life of your membership director a little bit easier, right? Because people will self-select out, but what they're going to do, and we know this, and this is the next part that is part of this whole evaluation of your website, is really having the information that your prospective members need, and or I'm sorry, that your prospective members want.
Mhm.
When they come to your website, a lot of times today, websites, club websites, you guys have contact forms and people fill that out, which is great. And what I usually hear is that, yes, someone fills out a contact form, we receive it in the membership office, and then I send a letter to that person, or I send an email with membership information. And I'll usually ask, and I'll say, do you call them first? Do you try to qualify them before you send that membership information? People 9 out of 10 times say no. I just get it and I just send them because that's what they want. They want the membership information. So it takes some time. The person has to wait to get what they want. Your membership person has to take the time to send that email, even if it's a copy and paste. They
Yeah.
still have to take the time to do that. What's a better way to make that happen?
Yeah, so I think you need to have, sections of your website that, number one, they're gathering information along the way. And so these might be people who are not ready to reach out and become a member. They might not even be ready to receive pricing and all the information that they need. But there are certain pieces of content that websites and clubs can offer for those just kicking the tires. And maybe these are people who are not qualified quite yet to be a member of your club. Maybe they're looking for more or less or something different. So, like you said, you want to allow those people to kind of opt out and know that themselves if they're not ready. And then the membership director doesn't have to waste time for that. But for some items like pricing and membership, more deep membership information, that could be offered automatically, but not necessarily for free. And what I mean by that is you can ask the prospect for a little bit of information about them with a form. So there's a form that says just give me your name, phone number, email. You might not call them right away because maybe it's a piece of content that's just giving a little bit more of information about you, but now they're in your system so that at some point you could reach out when they do get to that prospect level, that request a tour, contact me now phase. And while they're in this dipping their toe in the prospective member phase, you kind of don't have to worry about them at that point.
Right. So that whole idea of having like almost different levels of interest, right? Like kind of interested, I kind of like your blog, it's helping me to learn more, right? Maybe you're not really ready for a phone call or a tour or anything like that. Versus when someone is saying, "Hey, let's say it's download our membership guide for more
Mhm.
membership information, download our membership guide," or something like that. That's probably a little bit more of a serious prospect.
Yes. Yeah, it is. But that person might not be at the requested tour stage yet.
Right.
So yeah, so varying levels of interest, and it's all just about getting the information that your prospects want, how they want it, when they want it.
Yeah, and I think, just this whole idea of allowing people to opt out, to self-select out. Like I get your membership, your initiation and your monthly dues, and I'm like, "Ooh, I didn't know it was going to be that much." Right?
Mhm.
Then
Right.
then your membership person isn't spending time with the tour. Isn't like, and we all know the line which is like, "Hey, if I can get someone in for a tour, then I can usually, convert them," which is great. But how many tours do you do with an unqualified prospect? You're like, you get through the tour and they're like, "Oh, wait, I didn't know it'd be that much.
Yeah.
I'm not interested." Right?
Right. And how many more leads could you be gathering if you didn't make people request to, take a tour just to find out if they kind of like you or not?
Exactly. Totally. Yeah. So having additional information, making it easier for people to understand what your club is all about, and then converting them in a way that really makes sense for that prospective member, but also something that streamlines that process for your membership team is huge.
Yeah, yeah, we hear from a lot of membership directors, they are a team of one. And then when they're not there, it might be the receptionist giving a tour, and it might be, somebody in the back office that's, sending out this information. So a lot of times it's, a shoestring kind of team. And so, in this way, this process that we're talking about, where you're offering this bit of content, you're asking them for an email, maybe you're setting up an automated email campaign to kind of stay in touch with that person until they're ready to buy. What you're doing there is creating a whole nother salesperson,
Right.
really, that you don't have to worry about.
It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. We heard some statistics recently that say it takes about 8 to 12 touch points for a prospect to become a customer. And, I was just talking with a membership director today that said, think how much time do you have to reach out to somebody 8 to 12 times of your list of, say, 100 leads? I
Right.
mean, they just don't have that time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we all know that people in the membership roles are overworked in many
Yeah.
ways. I mean, there's a lot that they're responsible for, and that they have to keep track of. Okay, there's probably a whole. I know there's another conversation around that whole idea of what happens once someone converts, and there's a whole conversation around how do we, as we would say, nurture those contacts. It's like so often in a membership office, someone will fill out a form like that on the website. And if they're not ready, then the membership director just disregards or throws the form away, or, and then they wait till the next time instead of trying to stay in touch with them. So we'll talk about that later. Um, just some final thoughts, Lise, from your perspective. And I'll put you on the spot a little bit. We didn't really prep for this in our pregame, but the
No.
but I'm just wondering, like, what do you for someone who's listening to this going, yeah, you know what, we do need to update our club website. Um, what would be the things that you would say are most important for that club leader to really think about as they think about, because they're thinking just redesign, right? And sometimes they might even think, well, hey, our web provider right now is going to do it for free, like
Right.
they're not even going to charge us. But what are the things that they need to take into consideration?
Well, right away, think about it like you're building your house. You're getting your house in order, and you're not going to build your house, on styrofoam or, sand. You're going to, build it structurally sound. So the first thing right off the bat is using web building tools that are, right away, just like we said, built so that search engines can find them. They a lot of the tools we use are you can automatically migrate onto the platforms we use, and immediately they're more modern. So we even say, even if you just have the budget to migrate off of your WordPress site or your club software site onto a platform like what we use, it's going to automatically elevate, modernize the look and feel of your website.
Wait, what does that mean though? When you say, I mean, I get like modernize the look and feel. I don't
Mhm.
really know, just thinking for someone who might be listening, what does that mean?
Yep. So there are certain practices, we see now that, are much different than websites even 5 years ago. And the reason being is because websites now need to respond quickly to whatever device somebody is using. Most people looking at your website are not on a desktop, probably. They're on a phone. So your website needs to respond to whether the size of the phone, whether you're on an iPad, things like that. So the navigation needs to work a little differently. The way that the photos work around the text needs to respond so that it's easy to scroll and read. You don't get to choose that you want this navigation on the left hand side, right there next to this one little graphic. You can't get that picky, but it does need to be readable and look nice for the user with a lot of white space
Got it.
usually.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? All right. So let's keep going. So right away, it's like getting it, make sure, I think your thought is make sure that you're building this new site on a modern template, or a template's going to, that will allow you to sort of modernize your website.
That's right.
What else do you think?
Yep. Well, like we talked about before, graphics. So another best practice of new modern professional websites are lots of graphics, big graphics, video even at the top. So you pull up your website, boom. We've all seen the drone video of your course doing the flyover. That's common. It looks nice, but somewhere along the way, you need to show people playing your course. Video does that amazingly because I think people can really see themselves like in the course, on the course, playing even more than graphics. But if all you have is, a half day photo shoot and a couple people that are willing to kind of, be stand ins for you, I mean, that's going to elevate it immediately.
Yeah, for sure. Any other thoughts around that?
Um, Probably not a whole lot more without digging too much into the technical aspects of your
For
website.
sure.
But I would say just a proper navigation, um, making sure that the items in your navigation. When one thing that has surprised me over the years of designing websites for private clubs is the number of clubs that don't have golf in their main nav.
Oh,
And when
right.
we say, like, what is your greatest asset? They say, well, our golf course. Well, we need to
And they have
have
golf.
golf in the main nav, and other items that you want to feature.
Right.
Events. If you're a private club that offers events, especially if you offer event space to non-members, that's a great sales and marketing tool. Your website can really help to boost that revenue.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And again, I mean, this conversation could go on and on with different
Yeah.
things to consider. But some of those really basic things, like that, when you said, when you mentioned that a second ago, I thought about things like WordPress, right? It's like, oh, you got to run another update. Oh, do you have that plugin? Ooh, like, and not to say that WordPress is not a good platform, and a lot of businesses run on that, and it's terrific, but it's like, updates and maintenance and all those things. And is it easy to make changes? Is it user friendly? All those things that, whether you are some of you are more technical than others and more capable in this, more comfortable than others, but just in general, today's modern website, like you're saying, Lisa, is just it is built to be, as they say, WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get,
Yeah.
and that's something that's important to think about. The idea, just one of my last thoughts around that is just the idea that like you don't want to get in and mess up your website, right? Like you don't want to have the wrong person like, hey, I'll just make this change. I mean, something I would do, and then all of a sudden, like, why does this image look like this? Um, but if there is someone who has some background in web dev that or that is on your staff that can help make some changes, or it's not as scary to make some basic things, it can be good to have a platform where you can do that without having to pay $150 for someone to go in and look and do something, or it's not a lot of money, but it is something.
Yeah. Well, like you said, we hear that, well, our club software will do our public facing website for free. Well, think about how free that is because, just like you said, the first thing they'll have to do is somebody's got to start doing updates. You can't just have the same, code platform, call it what you want, module widgets, all these
Right.
words, but, they need to be updated. And then number two, when we work with clients to say, nope, we want us to keep our website where we are, that's great. And then we say, hey, let's do this membership guide idea where we put a form on there and people have to give you some information before they get the membership guide. Here's the form. Can you put this on your website? I have heard of some of the software companies charging up to $700 in order to just add a form
Wow.
to their website. So start adding up these costs and, it's really not free.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Lise. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
good stuff. Thanks for jumping in and helping us out. And we're going to be doing this again. So we're going to, not so much this exact format, but we are planning a webinar on topics similar to this that we will have. Right now, it's early 2024, and will be available once we record it on our website as well. But thanks so much for sharing your expertise, and I will see you soon.
Yes. Look forward to that webinar.
All right. Thanks, Lise. And thank you for listening. If you find this podcast helpful or useful, be sure to like us and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, keep crushing your club marketing.